run through them, but just a reminder that something we always say, so it's important to reiterate it, that the format for the Torah is a narrative. It's a story. Format is not a philosophy book, because the Torah was not meant for philosophers sitting in universities. It was meant for normal guys like Joseph Eitan Friedman, Doc Reish, just normal guys. And the Hashem could have written the Torah in any format or framework. It could have been a law book, like you study in law libraries. It could have been a book of ethics, philosophies. The format is a narrative. And therefore, the narrative has to make sense. End of the day, the narrative has to be logical. And if the narrative is illogical, we have to understand why. What is this narrative trying to tell us? So the primary narrative, and I saw what Itzikel sent me a DM last night, saying that, and he's gonna put up some answers soon, saying that something about this was last week's parsha, not this week's parsha, the whole story of the buying and the selling and all that stuff. But you won't understand this week's parsha unless you analyze this. So what always bugs me about the way people learn, and the way you guys were all taught in school, except Doc, who wasn't taught in school because he's a public school kid, was that you hear these things, they're important, they sound nice, and they're cute little stories and all, but they avoid the heart and soul of the story. And the heart and soul of this story of Yaakov and Esav is a story about the founder of the Jewish people. And it's not very complimentary to Yaakov. And it's not complimentary to Yitzchak. It's not complimentary to God. It's definitely not complimentary to Esav. And at best, it's complimentary somewhat to Rivka. Although it's also not fully complimentary to her because she's deceiving her husband. So you would call this, if you looked at this sort of like objectively in a modern day context, if this was Eitan and Bela, you'd say this is really a pretty freaking dysfunctional family. Family's not working. Family dynamics, parents can't communicate. They're disagreeing on, let's think of a bad marriage, okay? Parents can't communicate. They're disagreeing on fundamentals. They're sneaking around behind each other's backs. And Yaakov wants what Esav has, which by some divine right, we don't even know what that divine right is. By some divine right of the Bechorah, Esav is the guy who's supposed to get whatever this Bechorah is. And none of you have defined yet what the Bechorah is, but there's something called the Bechorah, and it belongs to Esav. And Yaakov has to take advantage of Esav in a moment of weakness and kind of manipulate him. And I only say manipulate because you see how angry Esav was after, that Esav clearly felt that it was robbed from him. And when it gets to the brachas, when they're arguing about the brachas, Esav actually says to Yaakov, "You basically you're a thief." And if you want to just show you something that they talk about here, give me a second. So Esav says, "I'm going to die. What do I need?" I think you might be able to see this on screen. If you can't, let me know. Safari, you got it on screen?
Yes.
He says, "I'm going to die. What do I need the Bechorah for?" And he sells it to him. And then going down later in the story, Yitzchak steals from him. He deceives and he steals the blessings. So I don't really know what these blessings are. But there's some type of blessing that he goes ahead and he steals. And again, same thing. Yitzchak and Rivka, they're not aligned. They're sneaking behind each other's backs. They're doing all this crazy stuff. And this is obviously important enough that the Torah tells us this. This is one of the main stories of the Jewish people. This is not some little story of a Yisro and a Moshe Rabbeinu. If you think about the story of the Jewish people, this story is as central as a story can get. And in the central story, they're ripping off. Esav's getting ripped off. And the blessings, whatever they are supposed to belong to him. And then Rivka tells Yaakov, "Deceive your father," and he deceives him. And then he lies, and just read this. Jacob says to his father, "I am Esav." So he's out and out lying, and you give me your blessings. And Yitzchak sort of thinks there's something wrong, but he gives it to him. And then Esav comes in and gives his whole blessing. And then Esav comes in, Esau comes back from his hunt. He prepares some food, and he says, Isaac says, who are you? And Isaac gets really scared, and he says, I blessed him. And Esau says, bless me. And Yitzchak says, no, your brother's, he snuck in and he stole it away. And this is what I wanted to show you. Esau says, who is this guy Yaakov that he supplanted me twice? He stole the Bechorah, and now he's taking my blessings. I just wanted to show you that, to give you the feeling that what's going on here, the two stories are so intricately related. This is the seminal story of the Jewish people. And whatever is going on in the story, there's just a lot of bad stuff going on. So I'm going to run through my questions and then give it over the floor to Itzikel, who has all the answers. What is the Bechorah to make a big deal out of? If Yaakov was meant to have it, why did God give it to Esau? Why do you have to manipulate Esau? As Esau says, we just showed you, he says he was pretty angry about it, and he wanted to kill him. Why did Esau care about this and the blessings? Who cares? Why did Esau really sell it? Why would he do such a bad deal? If you're going to sell it, ask for something serious, not a bowl of beans. What is the implications for history? What does this mean for us? Why did Yaakov have to steal the blessings? Why does Hashem not tell Yitzchak? Hashem should say, Yitzchak, you're wrong. Like what happened by Yishmael, right? What happened to Yishmael? Avram has got Yishmael in the house. Avram and Sarah are arguing. And Sarah says, Yishmael's a bad guy. He's got to go. He's going to have a bad influence on Yitzchak. And Avram says no. And God goes to Avram and says, hey, buddy, you're wrong. You got to do this. Shema B'Kola, listen to her. So why didn't God just say, hey, give it to him? Why was Yitzchak blind to Esau? Why are they important? Can you really steal blessings? Does that work? What's the implication of history for us? What's the two stories in our world today? What are the positives, the negatives? If you could set this all up, how would you do it? And on. So those are my questions for you. And then I open the floor to any, and not just to Itzikel, but to any and all of you who want to kind of weigh in here and say, figure out, try to think what's really going on here.
I think one of the things that as soon as you asked the question, it made me think of is that it's to show that if there's something you really want, you got to work for it. Nothing's just handed to you. Even in the case of the legacy of the Jewish people,
who's that?
And who it's going to, you can't just.
Yeah, but can you
There's
deceive?
some sort of born right? Some people are born into wealthy families, but you still doesn't mean you automatically can get that. You still have to work for it.
You have to really battle for it. So Eitan's making one very valid point. We're not going to answer the question with one answer. So what you're asking, Chaim Baruch, is important, is that still he did something wrong or did he not do something wrong? But Eitan's salient point here is that if it just would have been given to Yaakov, he didn't earn it. He got it. He's born to the manor. And rich kids who are born into wealth and they don't do anything to earn it, they're usually pretty miserable. That's actually the first story of the Torah. What is the first story of the Torah, guys?
Yeah, I don't know, the apple.
The apple. What's that story all about?
Roman was content. He had everything.
Now, what's the first story of the apple? Adam and Eve. What's the story with the apple?
That they had everything, they still weren't happy.
They still weren't happy.
Everything but one.
Yeah, I can give you everything. You're not gonna be happy.
Yeah.
You got to work for it. You've got to learn moral restraint. You got to work for it. All right. So, go ahead.
I think that's the point, is that there is still some level of being born into. The befores still are treated special, but doesn't mean that the second kid and the third kid can't get something, right?
So, Eitan's point really is a critical point, which kind of is maybe the first key to unlock this, is that we Westerners, and we've talked about this last year, but it's important to reiterate it, we Westerners were taught that the more comfort you have, the happier you are. And the more you can get and the more you can give to your kids, and if they have it all good, everybody's just going to be happy. And you see people have the greatest wealth, they have everything, and they're still unhappy. So you got the very concept that the good things in life, a good life is one that's filled with struggle. So when you face struggle, everyone here faces struggle. When you face struggle with yourself, with the world, with life, what's your attitude to the struggle? Is your attitude to the struggle, is it bad? I wish I had more comfort. Or is the attitude to the struggle, hey, this is really good for me. This is going to make me, this is a struggle, but it's going to make me a better person. I know I was in the gym this morning and I did a couple extra a couple of extra reps, and it was a struggle. I didn't want to do it. I'm jet lagged. I was flying all over the world, but I know that it's good for me. So I don't feel bad about it. It might be painful, but I don't really feel bad that I'm going through that struggle. And that's obviously on a slightly mental, half mental and half physical.
Well, I don't know if that's a fear.
Got to speak loud.
I don't know if that's a fair thing to say that would be a struggle. I think a struggle is more with like
misery.
More misery.
Yeah. So now I'm just using that as a muscle, a parable.
Okay.
But go over to human misery. When we experience human misery, the question is, what's your attitude to conquering human misery? A guy asked me. I was in Chile, and I spent 2 days with Rabbi Tamim. By the way, it's an entire community Bali Tshuva. So there's hundreds and hundreds of kids, 400 kids in the religious school, and thousands of people, and they're all Bali Tshuva. There's one man in the whole community who's not a Bali Tshuva. That's Rabbi Tamim himself, the rabbi, one of the 10 rabbis. All the rabbis are Bali Tshuva. So Rabbi Tamim says, "Hey, why are you always happy?" I said, "What's going on? Why are you happy?" I said, "Look, my mother went through the Holocaust. She went through a lot of misery. She was always happy." So that was genuine misery. That was not like her parents were shot and her sisters were hidden in the forest and other places, and she had to escape. She had what could have been seen as a miserable life. She almost died. She got a really bad case of TB. She was in the ghetto. She had what could have been seen as a miserable life.
Yeah.
She did live to 93, but her health was always bad. She never had good health. So the first point that I think Eitan is making is an important one, is that mental attitude to struggle and misery. I met this 77-year-old Jew yesterday. We owned some property in Toms River, and I went to look at the property with some brokers, and this old Jewish guy comes over to me. He sees a Jew, and I say, "How you doing? Hello." He comes, say hello, nice guy. He says to me, he was a mechanical engineer, lived in New York, had a couple of kids, divorced his wife, married a Protestant woman, had 2 more kids with the Protestant woman, and he is living down here in Jersey, in Holiday City. His son just killed himself on fentanyl. His son, he told me, was the world's #1 pool champion. I don't know what that means, but he told me the name. You can look him up. The #1 pool champion. 45. What's that?
Snooker.
44 years old. OD'd on fentanyl and all. And he says to me, I said, "How do you like living down here?" He says, "I'm the only Jewish guy. They're all Italians. And I married a Protestant woman who clearly was not Italian." He says, "I feel like he's 77, he's like a fish out of water, And then he said, "Life really sucks." And I think it was the guy 77 years old, and for him, life may suck. I don't really know, but like he's gonna die soon. He might die in 10 years or 20 years, but he's 77. Probably not gonna be on Earth very long. Hopefully he lives to 120. But like the attitude to life, you're gonna die anyway. So life is gonna have its fair share of misery. The first approach to it, we always talk about this, is the Western approach that is brainwashed, is how important Western world says comfort is. And all the anti-anxiety stuff and all the medications and everything to help you learn to overcome anxiety through supportive measures. But none of them really say, head on, embrace your problems, embrace your struggles.
No, fix the problem.
Yeah, embrace them. They're actually good for you if you use them. But let's go back to, go ahead,
You
Eitan.
remember my buddy Judah?
Of course, yeah. Wasn't he dating
Whenever
your,
we do our big, what?
the one dating your sister or the other one?
Married.
Married, yeah.
Yeah, whenever we do our big backpacking trips or any hard, challenging adventure, we're like struggling. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's how you get to the highest peaks and
Yeah.
the most beautiful points.
I am going to Greenland next summer, so I'm anticipating
You're
some
going
struggle
where?
there. I'm going to go to Greenland. Anticipate some
Do
struggle.
what?
I'm going to go hiking, hanging out.
Clay's retreat.
If you guys want to do a Clay's retreat in Greenland, tell me, because they just opened up direct flights from Newark to Greenland. First time in history. I spent a couple of days figuring out internal flights, hotels, boats. Like, how do you get around the place? In
Yeah, it's 4 hours away, right? Or 4.5 hours.
it's 4.5
away.
hours, yeah, and you're in Greenland.
What, the flight?
Yeah.
Okay, we're all in.
So what do you got to plan it? I can't be your mother, you know.
He said you got to figure it out. Listen, Rabbi, I know that you're Rabbi. In the Eretz Yisrael, all of us all say the opposite of pleasure is not pain. The opposite of pleasure is comfort, right?
Yes. The opposite of yeah.
So, but yeah.
All right, go back to the big set of questions here.
Wait, say that again. The opposite of pleasure is comfort?
Yeah, not pain. Because like what Eitan just said, when he hikes up the mountain, he's in pain, but the pain is going to bring him ultimate pleasure when he reaches the top of the mountain. So.
All right, so let's go to the core story. We don't want to be too much kumbaya here with embracing struggle and all, but what's going on in this critical central story for the Jewish people? And it's just like such a offbeat. If you would have asked a kid to write this story, like what is going on here? Like what is this? What's happening here, guys? Itzikel, you had a mouthful to say.
I think the first thing is really what's the Bechora, what does that really mean of being the firstborn? Esau doesn't really care.
What are they fighting over? And why would Esau? Why? And that's your starting point. Why are they fighting over? And why would Esau be at one point of his life ready to just give it up for a bowl of beans? And why would at the next point he say, "Hey, I'm going to murder you for taking this away"? What is something in your life that could be so valuable and so invaluable at the same time, with such mixed feelings about it? What is this Bechora? And the blessings. Clearly, they're one story.
Maybe because, if you look at it from the very base level, it's something like it wasn't important to Esau. He didn't care initially, but once he saw maybe that it was important to Yaakov, he said, wait a second, maybe
It's too trite for me.
The real estate.
I like what you're saying. It's like real estate, but it's too trite. Doesn't funk home. Doc is saying that, hey, you know what? He thought it wasn't of value, but if the other guy wants it, so hey, it must be worth something.
I'm not sure Esau really understood what it meant, and I'm not sure I understand what it means. You're the firstborn, and to me it always seemed like the firstborn gets the first blessing.
I mean, he wanted to murder Yaakov. He spent his life trying to kill him. And he's been trying to murder us since for 2,000 years, 3,000 years. He's been going after us. He has a nice little United Nations and 170 countries. You think of it, the leaders of the Jewish people are criminals in 170 countries around the world. The two top, the military and the political leader of the Jews today, are both. If they walk into 140 or 50 countries or more, they'll get arrested and they'll be put in prison for the rest of their lives, put on trial like Eichmann for defending Jews. So there is something screwy in the world, and if you deny that, you're lying to yourself. There is something very screwy in the world, and to deny the fact that even though Eitan lives with Riley and Troy and all these guys down there, and Gentiles can be really nice, and we all have good Gentile friends. But at the end of the day, there is an essential conflict between the world and the Jews. And clearly, this conflict over the Bechora and over this represents more than just being a firstborn son. All right, Itzikel, you want to go? You want to say some stuff?
I mean, number one, what is Bechora? Bechora is something, it includes leadership, it includes getting a pishnayim, a double portion of inheritance, it includes being a kohen.
Responsibility.
It's a lot of spirituality.
A lot of responsibility. the Bechor, and the reason why the Bechor gets Pishnayim is not because he's better, it's because he is a responsible agent for the family.
So he's responsible for the family, the connection to Hashem.
Yeah, he's responsible. So when you think of a family, you have someone's responsible. I have a family, Baruch Hashem, and you don't end up with everyone being equally responsible. You have to choose someone to be responsible. In the Torah model, you have the most time with the firstborn. You set him up. He's the responsible one, and he gets a double portion, not because he's better or smarter, but because he's got to take responsibility for the family. First of all, he should be rewarded for it, but more importantly, he should have the resources necessary to do that. So if you have 5 kids and you divide up everything equally, he may not have the resources to take care of the other 4. You give him a little extra, so that he now says, okay, I got a little extra, I can now take care of the rest. So Itzakel's salient point, we had a salient point from Eitan about struggle, and Itzakel's key point here is that a Bechor is about responsibility. And what type of responsibility are we dealing with in this first story of the Bechorah? It's responsibility for the fate of mankind, for all human beings. So it's a simple story. The Bechorah and the Brachas is one simple story. Question is, who will be responsible for humanity? Everybody in humanity? That would be pretty stupid, because Putin, you don't want to put Putin in charge, and you don't want to put Stalin in charge. You probably don't want to put any Russian in charge, because there's some weaknesses in the spiritual character of the Russian people that they put themselves in the same situation over and over again. I mean, Putin was democratically elected. If you had to put one people in charge, would you put Germany in charge? Probably not. I mean, you look at their history, you'd say, if someone's going to take responsibility for the moral betterment of mankind, who would you pick? No disrespect to anybody. Would you pick the Jamaicans?
I would pick Confucius.
You would pick Confucius, okay. So God didn't agree with Itzakel. And God didn't agree with Itzakel, and God didn't choose the Chinese, who have mobile execution vans, so that when they execute 20 to 40,000 people a year, they could sell the body parts, so that they could take out all the body parts first and only then kill the prisoner.
Hey, hold on a second. Not today. Chinese 70 years ago. Today things change. Everything.
Have you read a little bit of Chinese history of what it was like during the warlords before the communists took over? Have you read of the brutality of the American Indians, or of the Aztecs, or the nice folks in Chile and Peru? How about the Spanish?
Yeah.
Yeah. So God had to make a choice, and that choice was a consequential choice. I'm going to have to choose a people. Everyone's going to be imperfect, because if they weren't imperfect, they wouldn't be here in creation. So I'm going to choose a nation, a group, let's call it, to take responsibility for mankind. Whoever I choose is going to be imperfect. There's no way around that.
But did he choose the least perfect group? Is that who we are?
No, he chose the group that he thought could get the job best done. Then the question arises, and we're imperfect, all nations are imperfect, but he felt we could do this job best. And these weekly Torah reports are all about why God thought that we were best. What does it mean to be a Jew? Why us? What does he see in our national character? And then the question then turns to, why did we have to get our special role in such a subterfugeous, unique, if that's a word, unique, underhanded way? And why did Hashem just give it to us? Why did we have to steal it and all?
I mean, wouldn't it be, if Hashem wanted it to be that Yaakov got the Bechorah, he would have just let him come out first.
Right. Why not just give it to him?
Why just plop him out, and then we don't have to go through the other 19 issues?
Right.
Yaakov.
Right, just give it to him.
And the same with the Brachos.
Just give it to him. So one thing I'll say is that, and this is not the main point, but it's an important one, is that the fact that Esav could have gotten it sort of makes him be unable to complain that he doesn't have it. In other words, the world has a love-hate relationship with the Jews. And if any of you know that, You're smart. If you don't, you're blind. You're not stupid. The world has a love-hate relationship with the Jews. And the world loves Jews. The world also hates Jews. And the world is mixed. But one thing they can't really say is, well, why weren't we the Jews? Well, you could have, Asaph, you could have been the Jews. It's a metaphor. You could have been. Anybody could convert. You could. This could have been you. You chose not to. And therefore, you can't really be upset at my choice.
Aaron, Rabbi.
Yep.
So I didn't finish my answer. I think what Eitan said, I just want to build on that because that is very true. So it's basically, it's highlighting free will, human free will. And I know you started speaking about that now. And that's what Hashem wanted to tell us. He wanted to highlight free will and then give a choice for Yaakov. You got to work for it. And then you have to work for it and make the right choices. So he didn't want to just hand it to them on a silver platter because, as you say, when you hand things on silver platters, people don't learn.
Right.
You have to achieve greatness. You have to strive for greatness.
Why in an underhanded way? That's the main
really
question.
That's really what this was.
So I agree 1,000% that it had to be free will. It doesn't fully answer it yet to my satisfaction, nor to Chaim Baruch, since Chaim Baruch is whispering in the background. He's saying, yeah, wait a minute. But why in such an underhanded way and all that? Like, what's really going on here with the story of the cheating and the lying and all that, if it had to be in such an underhanded way? And let me go back to another piece, because we're sort of unpacking this. Why did Esav be so willing to sell it and so angry at the same 2 minutes later? Doesn't that...
No, so that if you dissect it into components, that I can understand. Because
A little louder, High
A lot louder. Come sit here.
so I was saying if we dissect it into components, I can understand why Asaph sold it for a bargain and then later on was upset. He sold it for a bargain because it was as a one-off. It's irrelevant to Asaph, the Bechira. Like even
Why be so angry?
what's that? Even we're struggling as to what it is. But in an overall picture, when somebody screws you, then you get upset for the whole compound, then you include every little thing into it.
Yeah. So I think you're amplifying what was said before. Is that Doc kind of said this? Is that you only value it when the other guy values it? But I think it's more than that. I'm not disagreeing with that. You value it more when the other guy wants it. I think it's much more than that because it's too far selling it for a bowl of beans to being willing to murder for it. Doesn't that reflect exactly how Asaph feels about the Jews? On the one hand, he loves them, he loves us to death, and he would be so angry if excluded from us and rejected by us. And on the other hand, it's meaningless. On the one minute, Asaph is ready to wipe out every Jew from the face of the earth. So what's he really doing when he says, I want to kill every Jew? When they bombed the synagogue in Melbourne, Australia yesterday, when Hamas marching with a bunch of leftists through the streets saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, gassed the Jews. There were 50,000 people in Sydney, Australia, marching through the streets, gassed the Jews. What are they saying? What they're really saying is, you have a role, you're responsible for mankind, and we so devalue your role, we'll kill you for it. Sometimes they love us, sometimes they hate us. Sometimes they want to be the Jew, they're philo-Semites, and sometimes they want to kill us for it. So at one point, he says, it's meaningless to be a Jew. Who cares? And then Yaakov says, wait a minute, I'm going to be responsible for you. And Esau says, wait a minute, you're responsible for me? And Yaakov says, yeah, now that you sold me the Bechorah, I bear moral responsibility for you. I will tell you when you're screwing up. I'm now the teacher's aide. I'm not the teacher's pet, but I'm the teacher's aide. It's now going to be my job to write literature and books and stories and influence mankind to tell you when you're doing bad things. And he says, who the hell are you to tell me that? Who are you to give me mussar? And he said, you're the bad guy. You can't give me mussar. You're committing genocide. Less than 100 years after they try to wipe us off the face of the earth with genocide, you're committing genocide. You have no right to be that person. This is a cosmic struggle, part of human history, over the role of the Jews in the world. Just to go back to this little short list of questions. What is this Bechorah? And the Bechorah is it's responsibility for mankind. And why did God give it to Esav?
I'm sorry, do you think that Esau at the time he sold it, like he understood that he had the Bechorah and this?
Yeah. But he said, I don't want to take responsibility for mankind. You think I want to be busy with moral responsibility? I want to live my life. I want to take more responsibility for mankind. Who wants to do that? That's a burden. It's a freaking burden to be a Jew. It's a beautiful burden, but it's a burden. A lot of responsibility. You know, you can't walk around in your shorts using the F-bomb every 2 seconds and be a lowlife and you know, I'm just using that because I was watching a Joe Rogan clip. You know, like you can't be that and be a moral exemplar for mankind. You have to make your choice. You want to go? There's a great little bar in Eden, Utah. I forget the name of the bar we went to in Huntsville. The old bar. The Legion. Great bar. But if you want to spend your life in the pubs and the bars, you can't take more responsibility. You got to make your choice. And
what was it that Esau he
didn't want it, and then Yaakov says, okay. So Esau says, I don't want this. I do not want moral responsibility. I want to be with Big Rick. I want to ski. I want to be booking the bands over at the at the Powder Keg.
Very specific.
I want to book the bands at the Keg. I want to chill out. I want to have a good life. You know, I want to boat, jet ski, run, hike. You know, do peyote in the desert. I want to live my life. I want to go to the bars, the pubs. I want to have a lot of sex. I want to have a lot of food. I want my travel to be about food and gastronomy and all. I want moral responsibility with the angst and the anxiety that the Jews have, and the guilt complexes that the Jews have. I mean, look at the caricature of the Jew. To me, the absolute worst Jew on the face of the earth, I don't mean him personally, is Woody Allen. Because he's a caricature of a neurotic, or what's the name, Larry David. They're caricatures of neurotic, obsessive Jews. And what are they really caricaturizing? That the Jews carry a burden. And that burden, if you don't think about how to manage it, you're going to end up neurotic and crazy and guilt-ridden and all that. So Asa says, what do I need this for? Yaakov, you want it? It's not the Nazir Adashim, the bowl of beans. I'll give it to you for free. You idiot, take it. You want this burden? You want moral restraint in life? You want to be a guy who's going to have to work on yourself? Control your anger, control your anxiety, control your depression, and not just want to veg out? That's not what life's about. You want to really face your problems head on and dig into your soul and do that really hard soul work and then be responsible for mankind on top of that? He said, I don't want to hear it. Metaphorically, here's a bowl of beans. I'd rather have a good steak right now than be a Jew. So Asa says, take it. And then Yaakov says, okay, I have moral responsibility for you. Let me tell you what your problem is, Asa. You're a slouch, you're a bum, you're a killer, you don't have a moral code, and you're not living the life the way you should be. You're missing your purpose. You don't have a relationship with God, and I'm morally responsible for you. I'm going to speak up. I will be a freaking thorn in your side for the rest of history. I'm going to tell you how to live. Even the secular Jew, a secular country like Israel, knows how to live better than any of these countries. I'll be a freaking thorn in your side. And then he said, wait a minute, I'm going to kill you. You're not going to be a thorn in my side. Who are you to be responsible for me? You can't take moral responsibility. Like, you're going to tell me how to live? You're going to tell me how to run society? So, if Yaakov was meant to have it, why did God give it to Esau? I think along the lines, I haven't fully answered it in my head, but along the lines of, he's giving it to Esau because God is saying, look, I can't put someone else in charge of you. without your consent. It's like when you go to the judge, you know, and you're dealing with accepting what's her name? Rebbitzin Britney Spears was taking a trusteeship from her dad. I forget who it was. Right? It was some type of I think it was Britney Spears or something. Like if you're crazy, yeah, then we put someone in charge of you and you don't have a voice. But if you're normal, I can't put someone else in charge of you unless you agree to it. If you haven't agreed to that person being in charge of you, they're not going to have any voice. You're not going to listen to them. On some level, there's got to be a consent form signed by Esav. You might not have read all the fine print. There's got to be some informed consent of, hey, I accept this. So Hashem says to Esav, here, this is your Bechorah. And Esav says, you know what, I'm happy, let Yaakov have it. So on some level, he consents to the role of the Jews, but then he gets very angry when he figures out what it's really all about. So it's not so much that Yaakov is manipulating Esav, question 3, not really manipulating him. He's tying into Esav's mentality, and Esav says, I don't want to do this. It's not something I want to be doing. I don't want this responsibility. I want to go to the Legion. I want to look at the nice girls. I want my pornography. I want all my good stuff. I want my drink. I want my sports arenas. I want to be able to bash the heads into people in the streets. I don't want this. But then Yaakov's going to get it. So he says to Yaakov, you know what, here, Esau could have said, I don't want it. I'm not giving it to anybody. I'm just abandoning it. Yaakov, you can have it. I'd rather give me a bowl of beans, you can have it. Now he consents to it. And now Esau gets really angry. So why did Esau care so much? Because now there's someone else. He's like a little child. There's like someone else who's his custodian. And the reason why he sold it, question 5, goes back to, at the time he didn't want it. And if you think about it, most people really don't want this. And the implication for history is so clear that this set up the conflict between Jew and Gentile, between the Jews and the world, that they consented to our role. And even the Pope said this, we're the elder brother. Pope John Paul II, probably the first honest Pope in about 2,000 years. He got up, he said, the Jews are our elder brothers. What does that mean, older brothers? You have a moral responsibility for us. So they go ahead, they accept it, but then they get very angry about it. But there are many Gentiles who love the Jews because they recognize that the world needs us. The reason why non-Jews love Jews, those who love Jews, a Douglas Murray, a Jordan Peterson, all these people who love the Jews throughout history. There are many, many, Johannes Rucklin, there are many, many non-Jews, famous and non-famous, many simple non-Jews who love Jews. Because they say, it's really something special about the Jews. They accept this burden. They're going to get killed for it. They're going to get shot and gassed. But they've accepted this burden for us to help refine us and help perfect us, to help us get to the reason why we were put on earth. Hey, you know what? These people are really amazing. I appreciate them and I love them. And then what's the implication for our lives as Jews? I mean, to me, this is all about definition. Definition of a Jew, it's okay to be a little hedonistic. Yeah, I'm going to grab some laps in February and earlier with Eitan down in Pall Mall and go to the keg and all. It's great stuff. But at the end of the day, I got to remember, why am I here on earth? What's my purpose as a Jewish person? How important is my Jewish identity? And what does it mean to us to have the Jewish identity? Ultimately, I'm responsible. I have to be a little different. Even if you're not totally, a little different than the Gentiles. When Eitan put up his menorah, the biggest menorah in the state of Utah, bigger than any Chabad house in history, to me that was like an amazing statement. It's like, you know what, I'm here with you. So many Jews who hide their Judaism. They're not honest about it. They're not open. No, I'm a Jew. Eitan, out on Shabbos, he's not driving. He's riding his bike around. He's doing his thing, right? You're doing your thing. So what do they think about you when they, this guy represents something. He stands for something that will make us a better human being in human history. And as we start out with Eitan's thing, it's going to be painful. But as we say, embrace the suck. Embrace that pain. It's an amazing pain. And it's like backpacking with Judah. It's going to give you pleasure. It's not going to be comfortable. It's going to give you pleasure because ultimately it speaks to the soul of who we are. Continuing, I'll leave the door. Don't worry about it.
Brother.
Number 8, why did Yaakov have to steal the blessings? Well, the blessings are just the mirror image of the Bechorah. They're the mirror part. They're the tools that come with the responsibilities. That's why Jews are rich. That's why Jews are powerful when we're powerful. Not all of us are rich, of course, but that's why Jews have wealth. That's why Jews have so much power. It's because God gave us this incredible power. Because you're the tools. Just like the teacher has a ruler in the old days to smack your fingertips when your kid didn't behave in class or whatever they used to do. The teacher has power, control, influence. When the non-Jews talk about Jewish control, what does that really mean? I mean, we have the greatest control. We represent God in the world. What's more powerful than that? If you could choose 2 powers, if you can run the Fed, or you can be God's representative for humanity, which would you choose? Which is more powerful?
I choose none.
You choose none. I know, Eitan. That's because you're still out there in Utah. You're figuring life out. But if you really had to choose one of them, which would you choose?
Representative.
Representative. It's so much more meaningful, and it's also so much more powerful. So we get the blessings, which is this incredible power of life, and that power is the power to shape the world. Why didn't Hashem just tell Yitzchak to give it to Yaakov? That goes back to the dynamic of Yaakov and Esav. Esav gets the choice. He loses the brachas because he lost the Bechorah. Now, was Yitzchak blind to Esav? No. Esav, and this, I don't know if we'll have time for this today or not, but Esav was a powerhouse. Esav is a powerhouse. You go to Rome, and you think of the barbarian world that lived before Rome, and you see what Rome built. Architecture, culture, art, civilization, law. Rome is powerful. Look at the West today. United States is the Rome of today. Look how powerful it is. Look at the technology. Look at what it's able to create for the human condition in science and medicine. Rome is amazing. Amazing. And that power, if that power would have been harnessed for the mission of shaping the world would have been a much better place much faster. But Esav just didn't want it. Now, can you steal blessings? No. But once Yaakov got the Bechorah, with that, the blessings came. That was, there were correlation, there were direct outcome of that. And again, the implication for history is the same. What is the direct line of these stories to our condition today? What do you guys see? This is what I see. What do you guys see in the world today, the Jews and the non-Jews? And what are the positives and negatives? Eitan just said the negative. He doesn't want either one.
It's the same thing. It's the same story. We're hated. We're the moral responsibility for the rest of the world. They want to kill us because they don't want to hear what we're saying.
And they love us.
They refute us. They love the idea of us. They just want to kill us.
And they love us. And they love us because deep down there's a part of them that wants to be refined and wants to be developed and wants to become something greater. They know there's something wrong with where they're at in life. The Ukrainian Gentile who spent 1,000 years drinking in the pubs at the end of each day, and the Polish Gentile, and the guys in the clubs and all that. At the end of the day, not really alive. They really need us. I don't look at it as negative. The world needs us. It's a hard job.
So, if I may interject a moment, they ran a study. They put 5 monkeys in a room with a ladder and a banana on top. You saw that?
And the cold water. Yes.
Correct. So after a while, they took away the cold water. Nobody knew. None of the monkeys. They replaced the monkeys. None of the monkeys knew why they're beating up the other monkey. Why you can't get the banana? But that's what they did. I believe that today, the goyim don't even think so deep. Today, it's just human condition. Correct.
Maybe the heart and soul of it is really that my takeaway is, as a Jew, every interaction I have with life and the world, to keep that awareness in the back of my mind, view it as a positive, view it as sometimes involving some pain, but it's still an amazing positive. It's the most amazing positive that I was given such a responsibility for mankind and to try to be a little bit better than I would have been in ordinary circumstances. Whatever situation I'm in, as a Jew, to be 5% better, 10% better than I would have been in another situation, and hope that that influences others and influences the world.
Wow.
And also,
All right, how does all this relate to this week's parsha? We'll do real fast and we'll wrap up. So this week's parsha is all about one word. What's that word? Parshas Vayeitzei. Anybody know what this week's parsha is about? I'll put it up on screen for you. Anybody know what this week's parsha, the one word about this week's parsha? Come on, you're all smart guys. I guess you weren't listening in school like I wasn't listening to school. How does the story open up? Somebody please read. Vayeitzei Beersheva. The story with the stones. What is that story about?
Going up?
What's that?
Growth?
Well, no. I mean, yes, there's an element of that. But what is the first thing he does? He wants to go to sleep. He puts rocks around his head. And he puts them around his head. You want to read this?
He arranged them in the form of a drain pipe around his head, for he was afraid of the wild beasts.
Fear. And this parsha, if you go through the parsha, you see this was all about fear. He took a mission, and now he's afraid of the mission. And if you spend some time on Shabbos, you take 15 minutes, just read through the parsha. And as you read through the parsha, read it in English, so it's easy. And as you read through it, use a good Art Scroll translation. As you read through it, just go through every time there's an element of fear in the parsha. And for example, Pasuk Yud Gimel 13. And Hashem was standing over him, and Hashem said, I am the God of Abraham. And he tells him, the land you're on, I'm going to give to you. Rashi. Hashem Nitzav Olav. What does Rashi say? Anybody want to read this? To guard him. Hashem recognized that he's going to have a lot of fear.
So how is fear related to Esau, the story of Esau?
Okay, one more second. I'm going to answer that in a quarter second. Vayira Vayoymar. He's afraid, and he says, how awesome is this place? How awesome is this responsibility? I'm standing in the house of God. Look at my set of responsibilities. So what happened was
Esau
Yaakov
was afraid of it.
Yeah, he didn't have buyer's remorse, but he said, wow, oh my God, I'm accepting this. And it's going to be hard. It's like an alcoholic who says, I'm not going to drink anymore, Like the day he accepts that, he's afraid. The sex addict who says, I'm done. The guy who's fighting with a family member says, I'm done fighting. How am I going to control how am I going to how's this going to be? You know what? I got a lot of fear. When you take that responsibility, it's going to be a lot of fear. And this parsha is all about that fear. And it's the whole psychology of how Yaakov deals with that fear. And he recognizes Hashem is standing over him. He's not alone in the battle. He's not just relying on Hashem. He puts rocks around his head too. He's not an idiot. He tries to protect himself. But it's almost symbolic because he realizes, put some rocks around my head, they'll still get me, if they want to get me.
We're getting Stablis.
Yeah. All right, anyone want to do a 10-second recap? What did we learn today? Seminal story of the Jewish people. Key story. Central story. Got a lot of weird stuff in it. Doesn't make a lot of sense. A lot of questions on it. And of course, as you're a kid, you just learn all the little stuff that are not really so important.
And that we have to
The
take
recap
ownership of
being
our
a Jew
actions.
takes a lot of effort. Sometimes it's hard and it's scary. Oftentimes it's hard and it's scary. But to become the best people we can be, which is the leaders of the world, they empower the powerful people of the world, it will require effort to get there, and it's not just going to be handed to you.
Thank you. And then apply that to your own self. You have a sense of responsibility for yourself, and we don't want the responsibility, and we do want it, and we hate ourselves for it. And the party that takes responsibility, the other party who's angry, why are you trying to put this on me? Let me just chill out. Let me just do my thing. I don't want to work on myself. I don't want my conscience telling me what to do. What did Hitler say? Conscience is a... Come on, you guys know this. Conscience is a Jewish invention, he said.
Oh, Jewish invention.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He says, you're like, what's wrong with killing people? You Jews, you made up this new idea that you can't kill. Genghis Khan killed people. I can kill people. What's wrong with it? You Jews created this idea. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with putting 6 million people in the oven. But in yourself, when that part of yourself says, I'm taking responsibility for myself, and I'm going to push myself, push to control my baser instincts. That's really what this is about. It's not about the world. But I'm going to push myself to control my less elevated side and try to be a more elevated, connected, inspired, real person. There's resentment in the other side of yourself. You really don't want to do this. It's a battle fight. And you're fighting, whether you're fighting over moral failings or physical failings or spiritual failings, whatever's going on in you. And the party gets angry, and at one point you say, I don't care, then you do get angry, you do care, a lot of back and forth. Just, if you look at life, you say, hey, I've got to get to my goal, I want to get to my goal. I want to be a really fulfilled, complete, and whole person. And for me to be that complete and fulfilled and whole person, I'm going to have to embrace it. And when I embrace it, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be good. It's going to be beautiful. As Donald Trump would say, beautiful. But in a real way, it's going to be a beautiful thing for my life. And it will give me serenity and true peace that when I'm 77 years old and I meet some guy on a mall and I've struggled and had a hard time, I don't think life sucks. I think life is beautiful. And it's a choice we all have, whether our lives are beautiful or our lives suck. And only you can make your life beautiful. God can't do it for you. It's like a parent. Parent loves you, but they can't do it for you. Guys, have a beautiful Shabbos. Eitan, you better hit some runs for me.